Hello, everybody, and welcome to our UFC 262 post show. I'm John Pollock, joined as always by Phil Chertok, who is with me to talk about tonight's card from a packed Toyota Center in Houston, Texas, where we almost had as many fights in the stands as we did in the octagon. Phil, the pandemic is over, according to Houston.
Yeah, apparently. I mean, and the way that some of the fighters were interacting with the crowd, it seemed that way as well. But yeah, Houston, they're having at it like Texas. They're just having at it the way that they want, and they're able to have a packed house for a UFC event, an exciting UFC event.
I think they coined a new slogan tonight. It was Houston, what problem?
That's yes.
How are you, Phil?
I'm doing great. We had a very lively group in the Discord today. There was a ton of people, ton of votes. There seemed to be a lot of interest in this event, which was a little bit surprising because it didn't have the biggest names on the roster, but still pretty cool that so many people were interested.
Yeah, I would say this is one that it's kind of been hard during this pandemic to get a good sense of where a pay-per-view is ultimately going to do in terms of numbers. This would be one that just on face value, I wouldn't see being a very high performing card in relation to others. But I think you also just have the novelty of the fact that they're back. There's full crowds. I think that plays some kind of factor in it, but I don't think this is going to be one of the bigger shows of the year for certain.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, as I already mentioned, not the biggest names on this card, and it certainly took a hit when it lost Nate Diaz. But sometimes, there's a confluence of things that come together in terms of timing, and it seemed, at least in the Discord, that today that it worked out. It was pretty popular.
Well, that's the only metric we need to go by. Discord discussion.
Yes.
So how are you feeling? Are you just like frantic by the time we're starting these post shows? I mean, how calm or full of anxiety are you right now? Like give us like on a scale of 0 to 10.
Well, your timing couldn't be worse because my anxiety is so high because I got the graphic wrong for the title at the top of this stream and somebody informed me, and so now it's accurate. And so how do I feel? I'm mortified, John. I'm absolutely mortified. But it's all back to normal now. Everything's in line. Normally, by this point, I'm kind of burned out a little bit, but I'm excited to talk to you. And when the fights are good, that energy rolls through. And that is the case right now. So now that the graphic is sort of normal and things are back and going good, I'm excited to be here, and I'm calm as a whistle. If our whistle's calm, is that the right idiom? I don't think so.
You know what? In our world, whistles. If you're just whistling yourself, that's a very calming exercise.
Okay, I'll take it.
If I had a whistle and I was just going on it, and that could be a bit of a frantic sound, but human whistling, that's a very nice sound, I think.
Oh, okay. Well. We ain't just whistling Dixie. We've got a UFC 262 post show to do, John.
Yes, that would be the second or third segue Phil has tried to make that he just wants to get on to the fight. So let us discuss the new UFC lightweight champion, Charles Oliveira. 19 seconds of drama, intensity, violence. This was... I thought this was like a documentary that we got out of this, Phil. I think like you could do a 30 for 30 on this fight. This was an unbelievable changing of momentum between these two. That first round was incredible.
Absolutely. I mean, it opened up with a huge shot from Chandler that busted open Oliveira right away. And then, but Oliveira is able to take Chandler's back, secure a body triangle, which Chandler then slams him into. This looks horrible for Chandler. I mean, it's the worst case scenario before finally he's able to reverse position, get on top, do some incredible damage, nearly has this fight. I mean, it looked like he had him in a lot of trouble late in the round with about a minute, and then finishes pounding him out. It was an incredibly exciting first round.
He was in a lot of trouble once he had given up the back. And what Phil was describing, when Chandler just explodes out of this body triangle, it was incredible. It was just an unbelievable feat of strength and athleticism that Chandler was able to display to get out of this. And then on top of that, just starts landing these big shots and wins the round. He comes back and wins the round. I mean, this fight, it started like it was Oliveira coming out with the kicks immediately, but then suddenly you get Chandler nailing him with that left. Then we go and Oliveira takes over the fight, and then it's Chandler that comes back. This was just what an amazing round. If you want to go back, like there was zero dead time in this round. Every second was of significant value.
Yeah, I mean, this definitely has the markings of being, a contender for round of the year. The fact that it was a title fight and, went back and forth on the ground action. Yeah, and that explosion that Chandler did to get out of the body triangle, it was a calculated explosion. He was waiting for the precise right moment. He was being very calm in a very difficult situation, and he nailed it.
Oliveira. So the second round begins, and if you were just exhaling from that first round, boom, the second begins, and Oliveira tags him with this beautiful left hook, and Chandler is rocked, and Oliveira senses it. He storms after him. He's landing right hands. He throws some knees. Chandler goes down, and he gets finished with strikes. 19 seconds of the second round. Charles Oliveira is your winner.
Yeah, I mean, for somebody, talking about him this week, he started out in the UFC at age 20. That was 11 years ago. He's been headlining main events for 6 years. Very up and down at points, but now on an incredible run, all-time submission leader, all-time finish leader now, surpassing Donald Cerrone. A really incredible story of somebody who grew up in the UFC and is now at the top of the lightweight division.
This is his 9th win in a row. This longevity is, he's in very rare company. And as they pointed out on the broadcast, he's only 31 years of age. And as Phil mentioned, he has been in the UFC since August of 2010. He was debuting on the card when John Jones, I won't say unknown John Jones, but certainly, it's pre-title John Jones is fighting Vladimir Matyushenko.
Yeah, that's not a name that you've heard mentioned with modern UFC in quite a while.
So this sets up, first of all, they interviewed both men afterwards, and, Charles Oliveira just left the octagon. He's celebrating with all the people. This was quite the scene in the Toyota Center, and Michael Chandler was also interviewed. He said that they will run this back, and he believes he will be lightweight champion within 12 months. I don't think that's a crazy prediction, but it's one that, for Chandler, this was a very tough loss. He's 35 years of age, but he will be in that upper lightweight mix. And immediately after, Phil, like if you are looking at Charles Oliveira as fighting, you can look at many different what-if scenarios, but one of those scenarios that I could see for Chandler next is Justin Gaethje.
That's really the one that makes sense. I think Gaethje's pretty much just on the sidelines right now as a backup in case Poirier isn't able to fulfill his obligations in July. But if that fight goes on as planned, I definitely think that will be the one to make.
And conversely, for the championship, I think Dustin Poirier wins. It's like rubber stamp that fight. I can't see that fight not being made with Poirier and Oliveira. Conor McGregor winning, I can't make any predictions about what Conor McGregor is going to do. Can you see Conor McGregor fighting Charles Oliveira? Do you see that being a very likely scenario if he wins in July?
I do, because there's no clear-cut alternative. anybody he's going to have a fight with is going to be a big fight. And if he gets a win, then that over Poirier, who is the number one contender, really, then that establishes himself as a champion. And look, I think that for all the bravado that Conor has shown, he knows he has never defended a title in the UFC. And I think that is something that he does want to do. So I do think he would attempt to go for it unless some massive other fight presented itself.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's a scenario that I'm seeing as a very small one of Conor McGregor being victorious in July. I just think that's going to be a very, very tough fight for him. So close after the last fight with Poirier. I don't see the third fight going much different than the second did. But those are your scenarios at lightweight. But for Charles Oliveira, it is quite the story of somebody winning a championship at a young age, but so deep into his UFC career as well. But it was a spectacular fight for the time it lasted. I think, man, we had two unbelievable fights on this card that I would say would be fight of the year contenders. I think the only reason people would hold up on this one is if you have just a penchant for a fight of the year being longer than 5 minutes and 19 seconds. But this thing was incredible.
Yeah. We were debating, what's going to get fight of the night, and that hasn't been announced yet. But hey, give everybody a bonus, 75K around.
Yeah, they upped the bonuses to 75K tonight. Very, Endeavor goes public, and hey, let's go from 50 to 75K. Just loosen those purse strings.
Poor Tony Ferguson. I mean, we're about to get to. I mean, he's the person who essentially made that happen, and I don't think he'll be sniffing a performance bonus tonight.
He will not be, because he suffered his third consecutive loss, taking on Beneil Dariush, and certainly I think Ferguson should have been the underdog going into this fight. I was just looking at, if Tony Ferguson is going to be able to turn back time, this was going to be the fight to do it. It's one thing, like, he was just outclassed by Justin Gaethje, and then the same with Charles Oliveira. I think Beneil Dariush, an extremely talented lightweight, but I think this one was really going to tell the tale on where Tony Ferguson's career is going. And it was a pretty sobering answer that he got, because he was largely dominated for 3 rounds. In the first, it's Dariush sneaking in a lot of left hands that are connecting and then getting Ferguson down. And Ferguson was doing well in the sense that he was not allowing Dariush to pass his guard, but also trying to be active off his back with elbows. I would say of the 3 rounds, I guess you could say this was Ferguson's best of the 3, if you had to choose. In the second, Ferguson was all too willing to be taken down and was setting up for a Darce, but just Dariush was very calm and defended it well and popped out, and it was never a threat. And he just took Ferguson apart inside of his guard. And after several escapes by Ferguson, Dariush just immediately would take back a position, and Ferguson just could not get ahead no matter what openings there were. And that led to Dariush going for this heel hook that was locked in tight. And the moment of this fight is Ferguson just leaning back and screaming. A referee was completely within their jurisdiction that they could have just called the fight based off of that scream. But it continued, and Ferguson...
You're actually you're actually not supposed to, like, they tell you, like, if you scream out in pain, they can stop it. That's very... Yep. It's a verbal submission. They can... It isn't guaranteed to be, but they're within the right to interpret it as a verbal submission. So yes, you're totally correct in what you just described.
But somehow Ferguson did get out of this. But he is well down on the scorecards going into the third. A very important round for Tony Ferguson's career, and his leg, Phil, it's severely compromised after. After in the post-fight, Dariush stating that when he had the heel hook, he heard a big pop. So not good news. This really brought me back to Ken Shamrock and Don Fry when they fought 19 years ago and had a similar situation. And Don Fry was completely wrecked because of that and not submitting. In this, you could see Ferguson very wobbly on his legs, so Dariush alleviated that problem by just taking him and slamming him to the ground and controlled the rest of the fight. He was inside control and then finished in guard. Total dominant performance by Beneil Dariush. I did not go 10-8 for any of these rounds. You could have maybe for the third, but I went 10-9s across the board and had Dariush winning 30-27. But Phil, your scorecard, and maybe talk a bit about what impressed you from Dariush first.
I think well, my scorecard was 10-9, 10-9, 10-9, so the same as you. If I was going to give any round a 10-8, it would have actually been that second round. But
yeah, you could have gone. I think like really, the second for sure.
In terms of what impressed me, this is sort of the result I expected. I expected Dariush to be able to control him on the ground. So in that regard, I wasn't surprised, but just the complete control that he had, his endurance to do that throughout the entire fight. Tony was a problem. Like, he was busy on the bottom, but he was able to neutralize that completely. Standing early in the fight, he was better. He was the one landing. I mean, I don't really recall Tony landing anything. So it was a complete performance, and it definitely positions him for a massive fight that should put him in line for a title shot.
Yeah, for Tony Ferguson, on the other hand, it's his third loss in a row, and one where, I mean, Phil, you look back at December, he was in a similar situation with the armbar that he refused to tap with Charles Oliveira. In this case, it was a heel hook. This is probably like a lot of damage that he is also taking in these fights as well. He is 37 years old, and certainly that I think this really does take him out of the lightweight contenders for good. And I guess the question becomes like what his future will be in the UFC.
Yeah, I mean, let's hope he's healthy. Like, let's hope that it's, he can recover. I mean, a heel hook, if his knee's torn, that's brutal. We've seen people just completely like end their jiu-jitsu careers because of that. In terms of, but one thing's for sure is he's extremely popular, and I do think that there's a lot of massive fights out there for him. I think fights with people like Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz would be the perfect type of fight and generate a lot of interest. So
he was probably like the most popular fighter on this card. When he came out, this arena exploded, and they were with him the entire fight. I don't think this spells the end of his UFC career. I still think you can put him in some interesting fights at lightweight, but it does get to the question of, once you are out of title contention, which I believe he is, then it really becomes a question of, number one, what is this guy fighting for? And B, do we put him, like, it's the UFC's kind of template is once you're at this stage, you're put in positions where it's up and coming fighters that are going to be thrown at you and trying to essentially make a name off of someone like a Tony Ferguson. Like, that's the scenario I see him evolving into.
I agree. I do still think that there's a couple of pretty high profile fights that you can do for him ahead of time before you throw him to somebody who isn't a big name that you're trying to make off of him.
We continue on, and next fight to talk about was Matt Schnell and Rogério Bontorin fighting at bantamweight. But Bontorin, who was a late replacement for Alex Perez, he regularly fights at flyweight and was just knocked out by Kai Kara France back in March. Took this fight on short notice. He missed weight at 137 pounds, so he was fined a portion of his purse, but won the fight. The judges all scored it for him. This was a fight where, I mean, he used his striking very effectively, especially early on. He was landing clean. There were some close rounds in here. Schnell was he was able to land a body kick and go high in the second, but then whatever output he had forward in the second kind of was overridden by this giant flurry that Bontorin had at the end of the second. And then in the third, Bontorin just unloads on him against the fence. He throws a flying knee, and Matt Schnell loses his mouth guard in all of this. And referee Kerry Hatley, didn't appear to notice it at first. And Matt Schnell fought the last 90 seconds or so of this fight just with no mouth guard with Bontorin in his guard. So anyway, some potential dental work that Matt Schnell was flirting with here. And the crowd erupted in fuck Jake Paul chants to end this fight, which resulted in scorecards of 30-27 twice and 29-28 for Bontorin.
Yeah, this was an okay fight. It didn't get a lot of love in the chat, but I think part of it was, it was coming off of another fight that wasn't terribly exciting, and these weren't the biggest names. This was a card that was supposed to have Nate Diaz versus Leon Edwards, and we didn't get that. So a little rough go for these guys, but I thought it was a pretty good fight, and for Bontorin, I thought he did quite well. Missed weight, short notice, okay. They're saying they were talking that he fights at flyweight and he was weighing 165 off season. Get that under control, buddy.
That's a hell of an off season.
Yeah.
So he improves
I don't weigh 165, and I would never sniff flyweight. So that's insane. That's really insane.
So he improves to 17-3 with the win. The fight that Phil was referencing prior to this was Katlyn Chookagian taking on Viviane Araújo at 125 pounds. So this was a fight that many people were just mystified by some of the scoring afterward. So the first round sees Araújo landing the heavier strikes, used a left hook that landed several times, but then it was Chookagian in the back half of the round finding her rhythm and landed in the clinch. She was landing down the stretch here. It was a pretty close round. I think you could honestly go either way here. I scored it for Araújo. In the second, Araújo gets her down and then moves to half guard, and she's going for this one-arm guillotine, gets to full mount, but then lets go of the neck, and there's a scramble, and Chookagian is able to get out, back to her feet, and land some strikes at the end. And in between, Joe Rogan, he's getting some word from the truck. Did we just see a phantom tap? And Joe Rogan's just throwing this out there, so the whole audience is like, oh boy, what do we have here? Is this another Fabricio Verdum situation? They showed the replay. I hardly took this to be a controversy. I mean, if you really want to argue it, I guess you could try to, but I don't know. The video evidence to me was not enough to really convict Chookagian here.
No, but it certainly was the most dramatic point in the fight. It was the closest that we were to getting a finish.
I just love that it's Joe too that they go to with the theories.
The conspiracy theory. Hey Joe, this shadow. Look at this shadow.
I just want to know the code. They tell him Joe, possible tap, and his eyes just light up. Give me the footage. So the third round, an easy round for Chookagian. This was definitely her best round here. She landed a left high kick. The eye was swelling for Araújo. Just a great round overall for her striking. So we go to the scorecards. Now, before we go to the judges' scorecards, how did you score the fight, Phil? Please don't say it was 30-27 for Chookagian.
No. So I had it Araújo 2-1. I gave her the first two. But those were close rounds. The second one is a bit harder to give to Chookagian because of the time she spent on bottom. But when she did get up, she clearly looked fresher and did land some damage. So I thought that, the first two I gave to Araújo, and then the third I gave to Chookagian.
Well, we completely agreed. I had the first two for Araújo and the third to Chookagian. I would have been fine 29-28 in either direction, which is what they had here. It was a unanimous decision for Chookagian, who got two 29-28s and then the 30-27. And I think it was the 30-27 that people had the harder time digesting. I mean, if you really want to go out on I just felt like, man, she was mounted and had like a deep submission in the second. That to me was a tough score. 29-28, I can stomach. That was fine. It was a close fight, but honestly, Phil, for this flyweight division, like I don't think Chookagian, I don't know how many wins she could rack up that would earn her a rematch with Valentina Shevchenko. It's like they brought it up in the fight. I mean, this is a woman that has been competing in the UFC for years and has not, every single one has gone a decision. Like it's a tough situation once you've had that title fight to build yourself back there, and it's not like you're gonna have people beating the doors down, demanding another title fight for Katlyn Chookagian.
Yeah, she's, in terms of her style, it kind of reminds me of Holly Holm. Like she has the ability to use effective footwork to keep range, and it often leads to not terribly exciting fights. Now, Holly Holm does have some highlight reel knockouts. Chookagian doesn't have those, and Holly Holm has a big fan base, and Chookagian doesn't have that either. So I agree, unless one of those two things changes, she will not be getting a title shot anytime soon.
I thought it was a decent fight, though. I wasn't bored during this fight. But there we go. That was the outcome there. The opener, Shane Burgos and Edson Barboza. This one promised to provide fireworks, and it did not. It did not disappoint. The first round, Barboza is immediately going for leg kicks. This guy, the speed of these are just cannons he is firing off. Burgos is coming back. He's landing big shots, and Barboza's eye starts to swell. Barboza goes for a spinning wheel kick and then staggers Burgos with a shot, lands another counter. Just a fantastic round. Into the second, Barboza is going with spin kicks to the body. Burgos shooting for low calf kicks on Barboza, and then Barboza hits his left hook to the body, goes up top, and my God, the intent that this man was throwing with. He was trying to send this guy's head into the bleachers of the Toyota Center. And then we have the third with this unbelievable finish where Barboza lands a right hand. It's like a left-right combination on Burgos. And Burgos like eats the shots, and then he's backing up, and it's like this delayed reaction. And as he's stumbling back, he crashes into the cage, and he's done. It's over. It was like if you're on like a bad Wi-Fi connection and you're talking to someone and it pauses and then it catches up and the feed then dies afterwards. That's what this was. That's my analogy.
So some of the Discord users said it was like a video game controller, like being unplugged. I sort of had it reminded me of like a transformer running out of juice. But it was a one-of-a-kind finish that I've never seen anything like that. I mean, you've seen people get hit and then, take a step and get wobbled, but he was like fine. And then he just shut down completely. It's usually
the body shot where you see that delayed reaction, whereas this was just a clean shot to the head. He was up right afterwards. It's not like there was a concern about him. But it ends at 116 of the third round. Edson Barboza proclaimed that he loves fighting at featherweight and said he is 3-0 at featherweight. I guess taking his split decision loss to Dan Ige rather hard. He would be 2-1, but nonetheless 3-0. What's the difference? But this was great. This I will spoil it for everyone.
That what's his face is undefeated still. Chookagian. He has no losses either.
That's true. That's true. All these wins and losses, they're negotiable. This did in fact get the fight of the night bonus for $75,000 each. I'm not going to disagree with that. This, to me, was a fight of the year contender. I thought this fight was incredible for the time it lasted.
Yeah, I mean, this one had everybody excited going into it. Burgos has been in some incredible, exciting fights. And of course, Barboza has an incredible history of going against every killer that you can imagine. And it's great to see him on a run. I think they're going to try to put him in a big fight to get him in a title shot as quickly as possible, if he can, because he's such an exciting fighter. He's the type of guy you want in big main events.
And like Charles Oliveira, this guy's been fighting in the UFC since 2010, which is remarkable.
Incredible.
So the undercard featured some interesting outcomes, starting with Andre Muniz defeating Jacare Souza with this armbar that was one of the most frightening things you're going to see this year. He had come in stating that he was not afraid to grapple with Souza, and then Jacare gets a takedown off the fence. He's dropping right hands, and then it's Muniz. How do you pronounce his last name? Do you recall?
I was saying Muniz.
Muniz? I'm butchering it probably, but he gets his own takedowns. For once,
I'm not the one destroying the names.
Well, they had an alternate pronunciation here.
Okay.
Anyway, Muniz gets his back, but he's shaken off by Jacare, but his arm is there, almost like posted on it, and he takes the arm and just snaps it. And I am not exaggerating when I say snaps it. They felt, the UFC production thought, you know what this audience needs? About 4,000 replays of this, and we'll get the sound for everyone to hear at home of this arm going snap, crackle, pop. This was absolutely brutal. If you thought that Frank Mir, Tim Sylvia, if that made you squeamish, this will push you over the ledge. 3:59 of the first round. Everyone's on focus like, yes, Jacare, this is his first submission loss of his MMA career. That's an incredible feat for Andre Muniz.
Absolutely. And, like the way he did it as well, like he was doing very well with his grappling throughout the first round. So, the situation was unfortunate because, in a scramble, Jacare's arm got trapped in there, but Muniz was, smart enough to recognize it and immediately attacked it mercilessly. And yeah, it snapped, and it was brutal. I heard it the second it happened, and I was like, it was kind of like, yeah, it was pretty disturbing. I was sort of surprised nobody else did, but yeah, everybody caught up, and everybody's heard it now.
So, unlike Tony Ferguson, I do think this is the end of Jacare in the UFC.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at some of the releases, people like Yoel Romero, it definitely falls in line with that. A tough way to go, a brutal injury. The last fight wasn't a great one either. So really tough run, tough end to this run potentially for Jacare, who was so close to, at one point, many considered him to be the best middleweight in the world.
Myself included. I think there was a time that, when you look at that fight, you bring up Yoel Romero when those two fought in 2015, and you had the fence grab in there, and I thought if Jacare had won that fight, that propels him to a title fight. And there was several years where I think you put Jacare in there with whoever the 185-pound champion was. I thought there was a very good chance that Jacare would have become champion. He was so close to it, but just never was able to get that opportunity to fight for the title in UFC.
Yeah, it was a real shame that just, he came up short in some key moments. And, he also kind of had run like a little bit later in his career, not during his prime years. And I think that held him back as well. But an incredible, MMA fighter, an incredible jiu-jitsu competitor, a real legend. I don't know where he sits though in UFC history. Is he a Hall of Famer? I don't know about that. But in terms of MMA, if there was an MMA Hall of Fame, absolutely.
Lando Vannata defeated Mike Grundy by split decision. So we had scores of 30-27 for Vannata, 30-27 for Grundy, 29-28. Lando Vannata gets the win. This was a fight that probably raised the most ire of people online based on this 30-27 scorecard for Mike Grundy. I had it 29-28 for Vannata. Did you score all 3 rounds for Mike Grundy?
No, I didn't. I actually scored all 3 rounds for Lando Vannata. Although I think Grundy had some moments. He did a good the commentators were being critical of him and his strategy, but because he was having such a tough time getting it to the ground. But where he was doing okay was if he would take a step back, and then fake a little bit, feint like he's going to shoot, he could land an overhand a bit in this fight. So that was working for him, and he was trying to go
especially
back
in
to that.
in the second round. I thought like his striking worked best for him. Like in the first round, he goes for 9 takedowns in that first round. He gets 2 of them, but they were very critical of this game plan and kind of just being too forthright with his takedown attempts.
Yeah, and then he wasn't being aggressive enough with the striking, but he needed to sit back to land his strikes. So he was just in a tough spot where his wrestling wasn't effective and he wasn't as good of a striker. So he had to do with the best in a bad situation. He had good cardio, but Lando Vannata looked good in his debut at 145. He's sort of faded in fights. This one, his cardio looked great throughout. He looked sharp with his striking. I'm excited, and he's young. He's not that old, despite what seems like a lifetime in the UFC.
Yeah, I mean, he's had some incredibly exciting fights over the years, and he's just been one of those fighters. It's win, loss, win, loss. He just hasn't been able to build any momentum at lightweight. So hopefully the move down to featherweight, like to your point, he's 29. So he said this was the best weight cut of his UFC career. So if that was the case, featherweight that's great for him. Like he wasn't a giant lightweight by any stretch. So he wins the fight here. One judge puzzled, I guess, that Lando Vannata got the win, but the right person got the victory here. I think more will be focused on like the scoring of this. Like Mike Grundy had like a fine fight. It was like, I think there was a little bit too much criticism. Like he fought like a good fight here. It was just he did not win all 3 rounds. Jordan Wright versus Jamie Pickett at middleweight. This one did not last long. We had Wright land a knee to the body and then drilled Pickett with elbows to the side of the head and just unloaded on him, hit knees from the clinch and just chased him down. And there's an uppercut and knee that finally puts Pickett down, and he's finished with hammer fists in all of 1 minute and 4 seconds.
Yeah, really impressive performance by Jordan Wright, who seems to have a habit of finishing fights very quickly. I think almost 10 of his fights have ended in the first round or so. A very polite interview afterwards, but pretty interesting. I mean, obviously,
was this the best? Was this the best post-fight interview of the night? Because I would like to know what you thought was the worst post-fight interview of the night.
I didn't quite understand what Beneil Dariush was saying. Like he was rallying.
I know what he was saying. He said he wanted to thank Jesus Christ. He then wanted to make a statement against Marxist ideology. Then he wanted to call out Elon Musk. Here's my advice, okay? Because I don't think this is all just coming off the top of his head. I think like there was a concerted thought of what will I do with my post-fight speech. If you are that fighter, you have an inner circle, all right? Go to some of your trusted confidants and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking after I win the biggest fight of my career. And if they are true friends, they will be the ones to say, Beneil, not only is that really weird, it's not funny at all. It's not strategic. It's not funny. It's just a bad speech. You could do better. Okay, thanks, guys. And then he capped it off by, after all of this, he then announced after this gigantic win, it's like his 7th in a row, I'm also taking time off too. Maybe till the end of the year, maybe next year. It's like, wow, whatever momentum you have gotten from this Tony Ferguson fight, you are bound and determined to make it as fleeting as possible.
Also, How about the non-request for a title shot? You know, in my next fight, give me a shot that's going to lead me to a chance at fighting for the title, please. You know,
when I come back. When I come back.
You know, you're in the co-main. It's a title shot. Ask for a title shot. You're not going to get it, of course, but that's what you ask for, so you get it the next time.
So that's some interesting speeches. And then we had Andrea Lee versus Antonina Shevchenko at 125 pounds. In the first round, Shevchenko threw a kick and then ate this big left hand. Lee got these underhooks and got a trip takedown. And then in the second, there's a series of throws by Lee, who gets side control, then moves to a crucifix, gets the mounted triangle, and then goes to her back for a triangle. And she has this locked on for like 4 minutes. She's throwing elbows. Shevchenko is just trying to survive. She's not in a great position, but it's also not super deep at this point. But she's not getting out of it. Then finally, with seconds to go, Andrea Lee extends the arm back, and Shevchenko taps with 8 seconds to go in the second round. And Andrea KGB Lee gets the submission victory.
Yeah, it sort of reminded me of a triangle submission we saw a few weeks ago. I forget, somebody couldn't get the triangle because their heel wasn't able to go over the shoulder. And it was a similar situation here. Andrea Lee was able to eventually fight to that position and actually looked like she was going to get the submission. But Antonina did a really good job of defending. And then I guess once KGB heard, you know, that there was not a lot of time left, she got a lot more aggressive with the submission attacks, and yeah, got that armbar. It was great.
And then just quickly, the early prelims. I only saw the top fight, which was Priscilla Cachoeira defeating Gina Mazzani by TKO at 4:51 of the second round. Mazzani won the first round, largely controlling her on top. And then in the second, it looked like she was going for the same strategy, and Mike Beltran stood them up. And then all of a sudden, Cachoeira came to life and just destroyed her on her feet and just unloaded. Mazzani went up against the cage, and we got a stoppage late in the second round at 4:51 of round number 2. And that was preceded by Tucker Lutz defeating Kevin Aguilar by unanimous decision, 30-27 and a pair of 29-28s. And Christos Giagos submitting Sean Soriano, who's a training partner of Michael Chandler, with a Bravo choke at 59 seconds of the second round. And this got him a Performance of the Night bonus, along with Charles Oliveira. So we got the Performance of the Nights were bookending this card.
Yeah, it was a good opener, good comeback in that fight by Giagos. So if you've got a chance, I would even recommend you take a gander. Hot crowd again to start the night. They were into it right away.
Yeah, this was a boisterous Houston crowd, over 16,000 people, and a gate of $4.11 million. So this was a gigantic night for the UFC. They're doing okay.
Yeah, definitely.
That was the card, Phil.
Yeah.
What did you think overall? Like overall as a show tonight, I thought there were some very entertaining fights on this card.
Yeah, I mean, you had 3 fights that on paper looked incredibly exciting, and they were all on the main card. It turned out that the co-main event wasn't quite as exciting as we wanted, but the main event and the Burgos fight with Barboza, I mean, those were incredible, really entertaining scraps. And then you had really exciting fights before that. I mean, Jacare, the Vannata fight. So a good card, not huge names, but people were looking forward to it, and it delivered in terms of action, I thought.
So coming up next weekend is Rob Font versus Cody Garbrandt headlining the next Fight Night card. And after that, we are going to be back on June the 12th with UFC 263. And 262's loss was 263's gain, because this is where Nate Diaz is scheduled to fight Leon Edwards. The main card has Israel Adesanya against Marvin Vettori, a rematch from 2018 when Adesanya only won by split decision. Devison Figueiredo versus Brendan Moreno for the flyweight title, a rematch of one of the best fights of last year. Diaz and Edwards. Damian Maia against Bilal Muhammad. I really like this fight.
Yeah, I do too. Very strong likelihood this is going to be Damian Maia's last fight. It's a typical matchup for him. You know, usually he does well in this scenario. An up and coming guy, he's able to sort of just out grapple him, but it hasn't been going that way for him lately. I like that it's not a striker he's going in there with. And it's somebody who's going to push him in the last round if he can make it that long. So I really like this fight as well.
Yeah. Just look at the prelims. There's a really important fight between Joanne Calderwood and Lauren Murphy. The winner of that fight could very well be next for Valentina Shevchenko. In fact, I would assume it would be. So that's some of the highlights. Your favorites are fighting on the undercard as well. You've got Chase Hooper, Frank Camacho.
Camacho.
Yeah. So there you go. That is UFC 263. What is the plan, Phil? Are we doing calls tonight?
Yeah, we do have a couple of callers. So right now we got our usual number one. It is one John Fury 316. John Fury, what's the bottom line on UFC 262?
Okay card, considering I was looking forward to Nate Diaz, Leon Edwards, but I guess I'll have to watch that next month. I mean, have you ever seen more of an excited guy winning a title than Charles Oliveira tonight? Wow.
He was very happy. He should be. It's been a long road for him, but the man was ecstatic, yes.
So I'm assuming he's going to fight the winner of Conor Dustin next?
You should never assume matchmaking, but that would make the most logical sense, yes.
So would you match then Chandler Gaethje and then for the number one contender for after that match?
I don't think you even have to wait for that match. I would book Chandler and Gaethje next. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Chandler, what I meant. Like you do maybe on the same card of the or whatever. Maybe even book that like right away. Like maybe in the Conor card, they can book that Chandler Gaethje match.
I don't think you do it that quickly. I mean, you've also got to remember for Michael Chandler, he's gone from, he pretty much had to put in a camp to be the backup last year. And then you went into the Dan Hooker fight, and then this fell into his lap. I mean, he's pretty much had he's had to make weight 3 times in a row. I would imagine you give him a bit of a break, but I would say like in the fall, you shoot for Chandler and Gaethje. I think that is definitely a fight to make.
Yes, so thank you so much for the call, John Fury 316. Do we have our other caller, if they can let us know in the channel by reacting, and I'll put you on the air? Or are you ready to go? One Brandon from New Jersey, you're on the air. How are you doing, Brandon? All right, I guess Brandon isn't there after all. No Brandon, okay. All right. So that's our callers. Thanks for the calls, guys. Well,
that's going to wrap up the show then. That is the end. It wouldn't be a show without Brandon standing us up. So thank you as always, Brandon. But Phil, thank you as always for manning the ship. We will be back. We are live after every.
Actually, John, I do have one more thing that I do want to announce. I almost forgot. I know you are a big fan of network television dramas. And I wonder, have you ever seen the show Twin Peaks?
No, I have not.
Okay, well, it's one of my favorite shows. My avatar in the Discord is one Laura Palmer, who is an important character in that show. And we actually have some other members of the Discord who are big fans as well, one of which being Chris from Ottawa, aka Hacksaw Jim Powers. And so him and I are going to be having a Discord watch-along, Twin Peaks, Thursday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific time. We are going to be, yes, like the Pacific Northwest, like the location of of one
I like
Twin
it.
Peaks.
I like it.
And
9 o'clock Eastern. Yes.
That's right. Yes, I don't know what it is in UTC, so that's a bit contentious. But we'll be going week by week. We'll be going through one episode. We'll go through the original series. We're going to watch the movie and then the return. So hopefully it won't take too long, about a year or so in terms of weeks. But reasonable fun. And if you miss a week, you can always catch up and get the other one. And we're going to be starting this Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific time. So just join us for a friendly, spoiler-free watch along and explore the fun world of Twin Peaks.
Well, for those that are maybe listening to the podcast that aren't in the Discord, how can they follow along with this on Thursdays?
Yeah, so you just have to join the Discord, which is completely free. So go to postwrestling.com/Discord. And then once you set it up, we have open voice channels. Discord allows you not only to communicate with text, but also to communicate via voice. And so as John and I are doing right now. So you just hop in and you'll need your own copy of the show somehow. We're not streaming it, so we're all watching it along together. But it should be a really great time. I think we're going to have a blast.
All right. Well, check that out. That's starting this Thursday?
This Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific time.
All right. Well, that's a super cool idea. So check all of that stuff out. And yes, we're live here after every UFC pay-per-view. You can join us on Saturday, June 12th, when we're back after UFC 263. Thank you to everyone that participated in the Discord chat. It's always the most enjoyable way to follow a UFC pay-per-view with all the other post-Discord participants. And that's going to wrap up the show. For Phil Chertok, I am John Pollock, and thank you for tuning in to our UFC 262 post-show.